about Metropolitan Community Church in San Diego, California. It's a gay-friendly church that's been around a long time. That's what it says. Even though Paul kicked people out of the church for things like fornication.
Good morning. This is the Met Church. Colin speaking. How can I help you?
Oh, hi. How's it going? How you doing today? My name is Junior.
Junior, nice to meet you, Junior. How can I help today?
Well, honestly, I just had a few questions. I'm a Christian, and I just found out a couple things recently that happened in May with the United Methodist Church. And I'm kind of looking up churches and seeing what's going on. Apparently, the United Methodist Church in May of this year affirmed gay marriage for pastors. Yeah, well, I guess they dropped the restrictions, and they're doing gay marriages now if they want. Like, each church has its own choice to do gay marriage, so they can do gay marriage. I was wondering, is that your guys' stance also?
You know what? That's a good question.
Yeah.
I would say our denomination is a little bit different in that, you're talking about the Methodist Church, and while there's no official denominational policy, they kind of leave it up to each of the individual churches, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I understand, yeah.
Yeah. I would say our denomination, which is called the United Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches, they call it MCC for short. But our denomination is every single church that's a part of it has already made a commitment to be open and affirming and welcoming of LGBTQ folks. So I'd say we're a little bit different than the Methodist Church in that you're never going to walk into an MCC church that isn't open and affirming, because it's more of a denominational stance than an individual church stance. Does that make sense?
Kind of. So what you're saying is that you do gay marriages? Is that what I'm saying? Is that what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. We are a majority LGBTQ church, and we're a majority LGBTQ denomination. So that's definitely kind of a primary part of our outreach.
Okay.
Is performing weddings and baptisms, and yeah, absolutely. So yeah, in short, I'll say yes.
Okay. Now, I'm curious, because I had a really good conversation with the pastor at United Methodist Church. He was in Los Altos, California, and we came to some conclusions that were kind of striking to me, kind of red flags for me. I believe in people in liberty, and I do live here in America too, and freedom and stuff like that. But when we get to the Bible, I asked him specifically, is there any passages in the Bible that God marries two men together or two women together? And he says no. And I would think that would be a pretty big red flag, and also because the only verses that we do find in the Bible are against that type of lifestyle. So do you think that's a red flag or no?
You bring up a good point, which is there's a lot of differences when it comes to denominations, when it comes to kind of theological traditions about how the issue's approached in the Bible. I would say, for example, like here at the Met, we had a sermon recently talking about the covenanted relationship between David and Jonathan, and how, its similarity in historical Jewish tradition to a marriage. So, we might point to that as an example of a relationship, a loving relationship between two men that is affirmed in the Bible. But like you say, not everyone reads it that way. So I totally understand that there's some room for debate, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I think the elephant in the room is sodomy. Right? The homosexual sex. Because I have no problem. I've had very close friends. We've all probably had very close friends, as we see in the Bible. But I think the elephant in the room is the sodomy part, and I think just by nature itself, understanding that I mean, you believe in God, so we do believe that God creates everything with a purpose, and just the natural way that things work, the body, the creation. We understand that the male is supposed to, be with the female because that's how the natural process works of creating a baby. So if a man decides to be with another man, that doesn't create anything. You see what I'm saying? So just by that alone, I would think that would kind of be a big red flag too, about for sodomy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Junior, you bring up another really good point that's a big question of debate among different denominations and theological traditions, which is, what is the primary purpose of sexual relations? Mm-hmm. Is it procreation, or is it connection and intimacy? And I imagine, a LGBTQ church like us would probably lean more towards the second, whereas a more traditional church might lean more towards the first and say, no, this is the purpose of this, so to speak. So, yeah, I imagine, there's different interpretations depending on where you fall on that issue.
Yeah, well, like in the friendships in the Bible that you mentioned, we know that there was no sodomy there, right?
There was no
sodomy. The friendships in the Bible that you mentioned, the deep friendships in the Bible that you mentioned, we know that they weren't kissing and they weren't having sex like sodomy, right?
Well, we do know they were kissing. It does talk about how David and Jonathan kissed one another and how their love surpassed their love for women. So depending on how you interpret that, you might say, well, those are just two friends, or you might say, no, those are two lovers. So I totally hear what you're saying.
So they were like bros before hoes. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, yeah. So yeah, I think that that's quite a big jump. I think that they were under at the time in the Old Testament, they were under the laws of Moses too. So that would definitely tell us that they weren't doing that either. You know what I mean? Because they were under that law of God. So I think that God would have probably killed them if they did that, because that was that was the penalty under the law in the Old Testament for a man lying with another man. It was death, and for fornication, it was also death. That was under the law. So I think if they did that, then they would have probably been killed.
Okay.
I mean, according to the law, according to the law back then.
No, that's a definite. You make a good point, and we don't know to what extent the law as written was practiced during that time. So you bring up another good point about, were they practicing the law word for word as written? What was going on during that period in kind of Israel's history? So yeah, absolutely. I think I hear what you're saying there.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I'm just kind of calling around and checking out people's stances and hoping that they would appeal to the Bible, because I've heard, and it's interesting to hear what everybody has to say, because because they bring up different points that I haven't thought of, and then you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you run into a lot of diversity when it comes to positions and interpretations. So
right, everybody has a little.
Probably pretty cool for you to kind of just see how much diversity of belief there is, just even amongst Christians here in the States.
It's true, and absolutely, and it's kind of a little bit depressing to me, because
really,
well, it is, because I like people, I like everybody that treats me well and stuff like that, or whatever, however you want to put it. I don't have anything against anybody, but I love the Bible too. I love the Word. I love the Word of truth, and I just
absolutely.
And I believe in everybody getting along too, for sure. And I believe that we should be able to have dialogues about these things, not fight over them.
Yeah,
but
I hear you.
Yeah, but the only issue I have with this is that I just can't find it in the Bible, and everything that I see in the Bible is the other way, and so I'm wondering if people have left the Bible and just gone off of what they feel and think, because the whole purpose as a Christian, as I understand in the Bible and as I've experienced, is that we are gonna get thoughts and feelings and emotions, and however the Bible calls them, lusts sometimes, inclinations to do things, because we're born into a fallen state, right? Ever since the beginning, there was this curse of man because of what Adam and Eve did, whatever that was. And so we're all going to be having these thoughts and emotions, all of us, even if you're saved, especially if you're saved. But our job as a Christian, from what I understand, is to fight them off and fight the good fight and try to battle and win. Because even Timothy calls us soldiers. We're supposed to be soldiers. So it's like we're on a battlefield. And I feel like the whole idea of what being a Christian is kind of being lost. The whole idea of wanting to struggle and fight against these things, I think people have said, well, no, we don't have to struggle with these thoughts and feelings anymore. We'll just go with them. And I think that's where the issue is.
Okay. I mean, you certainly bring up a good point about, whether you have a thought or a feeling or an emotion or kind of an analysis. One of the things that we're called to do is assess that and decide whether that's from God. And I think, there are certainly denominations that feel strongly that that they're confident in their reading and interpretation of Scripture and fall on one side. And you've got other communities like us that would say, we're pretty confident in our own reading and interpretation, kind of historical background of, even when the word homosexuality entered the Bible in 1942. And so we would probably point to that as something where it would say, well, that's really an instance of where human prejudice entered the Bible.
Well, we have examples.
As opposed to saying, that the prejudice was inherent in the Bible.
Well, I think
it just goes to show kind of that diversity of opinion. But I think it's really cool that we can have this conversation and that there is difference of opinion and that we can kind of talk it out and learn what the other one has to say.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the biblical term is sodomy, right? So we know that that word comes from Sodom and Gomorrah, the town that was destroyed in the Old Testament. And then Jesus mentions, he says that the last days will be like the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. And there's that word again, sodomy, which is, two men being together sexually.
You bring up another good point, which is some traditions interpret the chief sin of Sodom and Gomorrah as being sodomy or homosexuality.
It's part of it. It's only part of it.
And I think other traditions would say that sexuality has nothing to do with the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. It was about pride and the just rejection of hospitality.
Well, what is the LGBTQ's catchphrase? What's the word?
Oh, are you talking about like pride in that way?
So the word.
That's an interesting connection to. I'm not sure. That seems like quite a stretch to see them both in that light, but I hear what you're saying.
Well, isn't that an interesting connection, right? And then
Indeed.
And then in the Old Testament, if you read about Lucifer, right, it says that he was lifted up because of pride. So that's why God casted him down, because, God hates that type of pride, And so that's an interesting connection to me, too. And then the rainbow is used, in which the rainbow in the Old Testament is a covenant that between God and man, with Noah, when he put the boat.
No, it's actually a covenant between God and all of creation.
Oh, there you go. You're right.
Even bigger.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And I think that's the beauty of the rainbow is even in the context of pride in the LGBTQ community, it's about embracing that diversity, embracing all of God's creation. I think that's probably how our tradition would interpret that.
Yeah, like acceptance, right? Right, like acceptance, right?
I think really just appreciating all of God's creation that God called good, instead of deciding and choosing for ourselves, kind of like you were saying, what we think is good and what we think is bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, yeah, but when God created everything, he created man for woman and woman for man. If that's our go-to for how everything is good, then where's Adam and Steve, not Adam and Eve? I'm playing with you. But right?
No, I hear you. I've heard that one before. I got you.
I'm playing.
No, I hear you. You're good.
But no, really, if that's how things were good, right? He created man for woman and to procreate. Because if there's two guys there, we wouldn't exist, and they'd be dead, and humanity wouldn't exist. So I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that people can get this type of life. I'm not disrespecting you, but I'm just saying it's hard for me to believe that people can affirm this type of lifestyle and be Christian at the same time. It's totally contrary to me as far as the Bible goes.
Yeah, it's a big stretch for some people, and I think that's something that we like to focus on. We call them, you might call them the clobber passages, kind of those passages that are traditionally interpreted as being against the LGBTQ community, and revisiting those and revisiting their history, what certain terms mean, in the original language, and how other terms entered the Bible. So that's a big focus of our denomination. But I can also understand for someone who's committed to a real literal reading of the Bible that may not be something they're interested in doing, and I understand for that reason that our community might not be the right fit for that person.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because in Romans chapter 1, this is a big concern to me because it's and again, I'm speaking with respect. I respect you and I care about you. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
For sure, man. I'd have your back because you're just a nice person.
Thank you.
But in Romans chapter 1, it talks about this type of lifestyles in specifics. Now, this is the New Testament, and it talks about this type of lifestyle in specific, and it says that God gave them over, man with man and woman with woman, in their own lusts, to do that which is unseemly. And the name that God uses for this action is reprobates. And the word reprobate means rejected. That means that the reason that people are given up to this lifestyle is because they're rejected by God. Now, I know that's a harsh thing to say to you, and I'm not trying to disrespect you. I'm simply talking about what the scriptures say. No,
absolutely. I think definitely there's, I guess, kind of like the other issues we've been discussing, there's kind of a wide variety of opinions on that passage. I think some folks would say it was about human sexuality, broadly. I would say other folks, probably us included, would look at more the historical context for the passage and would translate it and interpret it really as more directed specifically towards temple prostitution and that kind of practice as it was being condemned by Paul in that context. So,
well, but Paul also describes in the last days, perilous times shall come. He talks about men will be lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, and they will be given up to unnatural affection. So we have to figure out what is natural affection. And I think, we can understand that through creation, what is natural affection and what is unnatural affection. So it's not only in Romans chapter 1, it's also in 2 Timothy. And he's talking about the last days that this type of thing would explode, like it would become very prominent. And it is, as far as I can see, like it's in church buildings and everything like that. So if there's
I would say probably kind of a lot of folks in our tradition and others would really kind of take this passage in context as a condemnation of pederasty.
Well, that's one type. That's one type of unnatural affection, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But but there are other types of unnatural affection too, right?
I mean, I guess it all determines on how you interpret the passage.
All right, bro. Well, you know what? You have a blessed day, and if you have and thank you for talking to me. I just want to kind of pick people's brains and see where they're at, and
of course,
why things are happening.
Of course, I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah. Well, my name is Junior. What was your name?
Colin.
Was it Colin?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Colin with a C?
Yeah.
Oh, Colin. Okay, that's a cool name. Yeah, that's not common, but that's a good one.
Oh, thanks, man.
All right, Colin.
No, I appreciate you taking your time and just having a conversation with me, nice and wide-ranging. And yeah, I hope that I know you say you've been kind of calling around to all different kinds of churches. So I hope this was, enlightening, informative, and just learning a little bit more about our denomination and kind of where we're coming from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, at the bare minimum, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to understand where you guys are coming from, because it's not in the Bible, and so I'm wondering where this is coming from, and I can't find it in the Bible. But if you can find a verse that does, give me a call.
If you're looking for a little bit more kind of like analysis or kind of a deeper unpacking of our perspective, we've got all of our sermons online. You can find them on YouTube or Facebook if you search for the Met San Diego.
Okay.
And our senior pastor, Pastor Dan, kind of dives into a little bit more of things that I've mentioned only very glancingly.
Okay.
So if you're looking to dive a little bit deeper, that might be a good place to check next.
All right, Colin. Well, thanks for your time, and
yeah, absolutely.
You have a good one, all right?
Yeah, have a blessed day.
All right, you too.
Easy.
Thanks.
All right, bye.
Yeah. There's nothing in the Bible about this as a thing ordained by God. Everybody knows this who believes the Bible. And of course, when I appealed to what Paul said and the unnatural affections, he tried to say only pederasty or pedophilia counts. And there are other types of unnatural affection too, as you saw him submit to. This stuff is totally unbiblical, and there's a major problem. We are in the last days. This is what the last days are described as in the Bible, guys.